So, could you tell me your current assessment of the UK economy?
Well, I think it's on the brink of a credit crunch. The level of debt that England is in is astronomical, even compared to the American level of debt. So, whereas the Americans peaked at a level of debt of 300% of GDP and have since dropped down by 50%, a very smooth process, England peaked at 450% of GDP and is bounced around in a very erratic process. And because it hasn't gone so sharply negative in change of debt as the Americans have, then you haven't had as deep a fallover. But you've got the same fundamental dynamics. And the only reason people get that much in debt is they're speculating on rising asset prices. When the rising asset prices stop, the hot money goes into reverse. And you've got the world's biggest, large, hot money economy. So I think at some point when people realise the game of asset price inflation is over, all the regulations that let England accumulate financial wealth in the last 20 or so years will act in reverse, because it'll be so easy to pull the money out of the economy. Mm-hmm. So I really think at some point you're going to strike a credit crunch similar to what went through for Lehman Brothers, just because you're a far more speculative economy than the Americans were, and you've got a far bigger debt overhang and far hotter hot money than even the Americans had.
Okay, and I think at our last count, the UK national debt was 4.8 trillion. What do you think the sterling currency would have a future?
Well, sterling itself isn't compromised by a private sector bubble in the same way that the American isn't either. It's really what you do to your productive economy over time that matters on that front. And what's happened with both England and America is you've deindustrialised. So does Australia, for that matter. You've shipped, capitalists have shipped productive facilities off to the third world to take advantage not just of low wages, but also low capital costs, pocketed the profit and retrenched the workers back at home. And that's happened and been financed by the huge growth in debt at the same time that's kept this illusion of prosperity rolling. Now, once you pull away the illusion and you find that you have actually been involved in a huge Ponzi scheme, generating fraudulent wealth rather than real wealth, then you look at what's our productive capacity to employ people after we stop employing them, as merchant bankers and mortgage brokers and so on. You haven't got the productive capacity anymore. So that's the real dilemma. That's what really weakens you. If you had a bubble like this and you hadn't shifted production offshore, then there'd be no innate threat to the strength of the currency. But if you've actually deindustrialised the scale you have, then when you stop being able to pretend that you're getting rich by selling second-hand pieces of paper to each other, then that's when the shit really hits the fan.
So do you think that Scotland would be an advantage for Scotland to be independent?
Certainly, to break away from a government which has been, like the English government for the last 25 years, has been seduced by the neoliberal dream, which we're now finding out is actually a nightmare, then to break away from that political domination is a good idea. What would be smart in that situation might be to actually have your own parallel currency. Because if you're going to have what's happening now with the euro, of course, that's an insane financial system finally crashing, and it therefore means that people who actually want to shop can't shop because the crash in the euro's circulation rate anyway. So a parallel currency might make a lot of sense in that situation, but that's not the same as replacing it and having your own monetary system and your own fiscal policy, and having your own exports and imports and try to maintain your economy as a small economy locked into a very large one.